Great, lovely to see everyone here this morning. And what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about one of our preliminary case studies that we've worked on. Anyway, as Pete's outlined already, the aim of REMADE is to analyse thousands of Roman and early medieval artefacts and to create a framework for understanding processes of production, use and recycling of copper alloy in the first millennium. And by sampling this huge range of objects, we hope to build up a huge database of analysis and which will identify how copper alloys were used for the first time and enable the composition of copper alloy foils from throughout Britain to be compared and contrasted with each other. This should open up a huge range of research on a wide range of chronological, geographical, site-specific and object-specific questions. For example, where did metal come from to make these objects? And how was the metal supply organised? Can we trace changes in these over time? To what extent were coins recycled to create more coins and other object types? Can we identify regional patterning in the composition of different object types? And what might this mean for our understanding of the organisation of metalworking throughout both Roman Britain and beyond? How might similarities in the composition of different object types map onto patterns of distribution? Now, these are all really exciting questions which only a massive programme of analysis can really hope to address. But where do we start with that? Which objects, which assemblages, which sites should we be choosing to create the necessary overview and to illuminate areas which have received so little focus before? Well, over the past year, Pete and I have been working with all our project partners to develop some potential case studies on object types and individual sites. Things like T-shaped brooches in the West Country, Roman copper alloy vessels, Roman figurines, weighing equipment, and early medieval pins, just to name a few. And these things should provide a range of insights into how people used and reused copper alloys in their lives. For the Roman period in Britain, one object type, though, really provides an opportunity to explore official flows of copper alloy into Britain, and that's the coin. Although most were not minted in Britain, they are well dated and ubiquitous for the Roman period. And their analysis therefore offers an opportunity to begin building that framework for the 400 years of Roman rule, and that framework which other objects can be measured against and compared against. And very little metallurgical analysis of Roman copper alloy coinage has been undertaken so far. The main focus of numismatic work has been on auri and denarii, the precious metal coins. And where research has happened, it's tended to focus on the early Roman period, on Augustan coinage and Claudian material. Although Naomi Rubinstein's doctoral research on 4th century nummies should start to address the balance. Now, given this early focus on coinage, we decided to target our first exploratory programme of analysis on an assemblage of coins dating to the late 3rd century AD. And we chose not just any assemblage, we chose the Cunetio Hoard. For those of you who might not be familiar with this assemblage, Cunetio is the largest coin hoard from Roman Britain, comprising 54,951 coins. And it was discovered just outside the Roman town of Cunetio near Mildenhall in Wiltshire. The town was heavily fortified in the late Roman period, and it's possible that it acted as a centre for taxation, with the hoard being in some way related to this process. Alternatively, it's possible that the hoard represents a votive deposit or a temple treasury. The coins are buried in a ceramic jar and a lead box, and you can see the ceramic jar in this slide, around AD 274. Now, the majority of the coins in the hoard are radiates from both the Central and the Gallic Empires, dating to the AD 260s and 270s. That is, coins of the emperors Gallienus, Claudius II, and Quintilis from the Central Empire, and Postumus, the Tetrarchy, and Victorinus from the Gallic Empire. There are also a range of contemporary copies, sometimes referred to as barbarous radiates. Now, this hoard was published excellently by Roger Bland, Edward Besley, and Andrew Burnett. and the catalogue remains one of the standard reference works for identifying and recording coinage of the late 3rd century AD in Britain. As they themselves noted at the time of publication more than 40 years ago, the size and preservation of the coins in the hoard lend themselves to a large-scale project of analysis. So PXRF should provide us with data for a period where little is known about the composition of copper alloy coinage, and few copper alloy objects were being produced in Roman Britain, at least in comparison to the earlier Roman period. So over the summer, Pete and I took our PXRF machine to the Department of Coins and Medals at the British Museum, kindly facilitated by loads of coins and medals staff, and particularly Eleanor Gay. We spent some very hot summer days analysing a small portion of the hoard, comprising a total of 1,543 coins. These coins were carefully selected to focus on the period AD 260 to 275. We looked at 70 issues across a range of emperors and mints in both the Gallic and the Central Empire. We also analysed approximately 250 contemporary copies, imitating both Central and Gallic Empire mint products. Now, the size of the hoard meant that it was nearly always possible for us to analyse 20 examples from each issue. And while we acknowledge that there are obvious issues with data quality of results possible with PXRF, as the results given relate to the surface of the coin rather than the core metal, the excellent preservation and the scrupulous conservation of the coins within the hoard ensured the elements that we recorded were not associated with corrosion products, but with the actual composition of each coin. Now, we hope that this relatively large data, big data approach would ensure the breadth of data necessary to examine patterns in alloy consistency and surface treatments, allowing us to identify similarities and differences in the composition of coinage of different emperors and mints at different times. We worked up a range of research questions that we wanted to answer. For example, is it possible to identify differences in the metallurgy of coinage of different emperors? And can we identify any major differences in the metallurgy of coinage in the Central and the Gallic Empire? What does the metallurgy of individual mints tell us about mint organisation? Do they have similar metal supplies or recipes, or do they work independently using different standards? Finally, what do contemporary copies look like? Are they radically different in their composition to their official prototypes? Or are real efforts being made to emulate their composition as well as their iconography? Now, by addressing all these questions, we can then begin to think about the sorts of factors which might be responsible for variations in the composition of different coins, from fluctuations in the supply of different metals and minting organisation to wider political considerations. So let's take a look at some of their preliminary results. Now, although PXRF detected a range of elements in the coinage we sampled, for the sake of simplicity and to keep to the 15-minute time allotted, I'm going to focus on relative silver and tin content at a variety of levels. First of all, you can see here a plot comparing the percentage of silver and tin content for all the official issues we analysed. It's immediately clear that there are differences in the metallurgical composition of the issues for each emperor. Gallienus's coinage has the most variation in silver and tin content, but as you'll see, the issues of the other emperors like Claudius II, Quintillus, Postumus, Victorinus, the Tetrarchy, are all relatively consistent in their composition. However, each emperor's products can easily be distinguished from what comes before and what comes after. It looks like the emperor, or if not the emperor, his administration, made decisions about what went into their coinage from the moment of their accession, with each imperial regime attempting or being forced to try something new. In addition to recognising these differences, we can also trace the direction of metallurgical change in the radiate coinage in the 260s, from what's a relatively high silver content to less than 5%. While this is already well documented by numismatists and historians for the period, RPXRF also gives us insight into the strategies used by each emperor to compensate for the decline in silver content. So in this plot, the average silver and tin content across each issue, emperor, and mint in the Central Empire is presented. For the Central Empire, the relatively high silver content of radiates at the beginning of the reign of Gallienus is replaced with tin as his reign progresses. Tin will have given the coins a silvery appearance, and yet is likely to be much cheaper to incorporate than silver. You can see here with each series of the Rome mint, despite an injection of silver in series 3, over time, the silver content diminishes while tin increases. This pattern continues under Gallienus' successor, Claudius II, and Quintillus, marked here by the red R's. Now, although starting with the higher silver content, a similar pattern can be detected in Gallienus' radiates from Milan, which drop from around 30% silver in series 1 through to 25% in series 2 to 10% in series 3, while increasing again in tin content. Now, interestingly, issues from Siscia are a bit of an anomaly. They're low in silver and tin, and they're more similar to coins produced by the Gallic Empire, as we'll now see. Now, for the Gallic Empire, it's also possible to trace a dramatic reduction in silver content, in surface silver content, that is. If we start with Posthumus's early coinage, we have around 30% of silver. Well, you have to keep the army happy if you're going to break away from your brothers in the Central Empire. However, Posthumus's later coinage reduces to around 10% silver. Victorinus and Tetricus 1 and 2 radiates are similar in their composition, maintaining that very low silver content. Now, despite paralleling the Central Empire coinage in its decline in surface silver, the coinage of the Gallic Empire differs in one important respect, and that's one significant way, is that this plot, which shows both the Central and Gallic Empire products, illustrates. While the Gallic emperors do use significant quantities of tin in their, the Gallic empires do not use significant quantities of tin in their coinage at all, nor do they replace silver content with tin as their Central Empire contemporaries do. Now, how can we account for this different approach to the use of tin? Could the Gallic Empire just not be able to source tin in this period? And this seems quite unlikely, given it's usually suggested that the major suppliers of tin in the 3rd century were Britain and Spain. Could it be that this is a deliberate decision intended to mark out the Gallic Empire's coinage as in some way different? And following on from this, if Britain and Spain were the primary suppliers of tin in this period, where were the Central Empire mints sourcing their tin? Had it been stockpiled? Was metal supply negotiated regardless of political boundaries? Or do we need to think about alternative supplies of tin elsewhere in the empire? There are also 2 further interesting patterns worthy of note here. First is the fact that coins from Gallienus' Milan mint are very similar in composition to Posthumus's early coinage. Did Posthumus just adopt Milan's minting standards and when he came to power? And if so, why Milan in particular? Did he perhaps steal staff from the Milan mint or use the same metal supply? Now, these are all questions which are currently difficult to answer, but are worth asking nonetheless. And second, and something that I've already noted in passing, is that similarity in the composition of Central Empire issues from Siscia with the product of Gallic Empire mints. Why this similarity? I just don't know at the moment, but it's something that probably we can discuss at some point. And these similarities and differences between the products of individual mints is something that I just want to draw out a little bit further. While the plots I've shown thus far indicate some clear differences in the tin and silver content of issues from Milan, Siscia and Rome, something very different is happening in the Gallic Empire. Numismatically, it's clear that the Gallic Empire issued coins from 2 mints, They're Mint 1, which was probably located in Trier and struck coins in 2 officina working concurrently, and Mint 2, which is probably located in Cologne and striking coins in just 1 officina or workshop. Now, while the products of these mints may be distinguishable on the basis of their style and iconography, they're practically identical in terms of their metallurgy, as this plot shows. This suggests a degree of centralized organization with coordinated metal supply, something that wouldn't be too difficult given the fact that the mints are only about approximately 130 miles apart. However, it does raise some really interesting questions about why 2 mints were deemed necessary. To whom and to where was the coinage being distributed by each mint? While the previous plot maps indicate that there are, in addition to analysing a selection of official coins in the Cunetio Hoard, we also looked at about 150 contemporary copies. These copies, which are frequently referred to as barbarous radiates, include examples which imitated issues from both the Central and the Gallic Empire. They're likely amongst the earliest radiate copies produced, as the Cunetio Hoard was deposited around AD 275, and barbarous radiates are thought to have circulated in the period AD 275 to 285. Now, a preliminary analysis of their composition has produced some interesting results. You can see from this table here that contemporary copies of Central Empire coins have a similar leaded bronze composition to their prototypes. This may mean that they were minted by recycling recent Central Empire coinage, or that they made use of a similar source of metal. However, contemporary copies of Gallic Empire coins are of leaded gunmetal. This is indicative of recycling of metal containing significant amounts of zinc. Now, potential sources might include 2nd or early 3rd century sestertii or vessels or objects of personal adornment of a similar date. Now, it'll be really interesting to see whether these differences in the composition of Central and Gallic Empire barbarous radiates can be seen in other hoards and other coins elsewhere, as it suggests that they were produced in completely different places with completely different sources of metal. And this is clearly something that Tasha Fulbrook will be able to explore in more detail in her doctoral research project, which is funded by REMADE. So Tasha, over the next 3 years, will be exploring the production, function and use of barbarous radiates with REMADE. And I'm sure in this short presentation, I've raised quite a few more questions than I can actually answer, but that's where I want to end. I hope this preliminary case study has illustrated the benefits of an approach which combines numismatics and archaeological science. This data clearly has the potential to provide an insight not only into processes of metal supply and use, but also to comment on the turbulent politics of the late 3rd century. It also provides us with some useful data points against which both earlier and later copper alloy objects can be compared. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippa. We have time for a few questions from the audience, and please type your questions online as well. Thank you. It's a Niton XL5 internal vision, and what we also did was to run the charm standards, which are certified alloys similar to they're commissioned by archaeologists to be similar to alloys used in the past, and we can share those results as well of running those standards. The data has been extremely good. I mean, obviously on the surface, but we'd be very pleased with what we're getting.
I just wondered, the contemporary copies that are more similar in composition to the real ones, do you think that might be that they're melting down the real to try and...
Yeah, I think that's a real possibility that the Central Empire barbarous radiates contemporary copies in the Cunetio Hoard are making use of almost contemporary coinage to to create these new copies, which really raises some interesting questions about what the function of these contemporary copies are, if they actually have access to real official coinage.
Yeah, because they're coming in such numbers, it's not just one you're getting from the shop that you're getting melting down.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting to talk Naomi about whether she saw anything like that with her work, because we only analysed contemporary copies, didn't she, before century? So
Yeah.
yeah, great to see that still happen.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll link up with Naomi Rubinstein's work. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks. Just a comment about the tin, because of course the 3rd, 4th century is the period of the great production of British computer. Tin is a central component. I just wondered if tin has been privileged for the pre-production rather than shown
For the that's certainly a possibility. It just seems interesting when the Central Empire pumping so much tin into their coinage, why it's a strategy that the Gallic Empire don't adopt it, despite the fact that there is that tin there. So there must be a reason why that's happening, and that seems like a good idea. Thanks, Michael.